Tonight on News 5 Live, the anticipated reopening of the PGIA and Belize's borders has been postponed as there is a new flood of COVID-19 cases in neighboring countries and testing conditions imposed for international travel. Tourism fell by $82 million between January and April. The PM announces that gyms and casinos can resume business, and places of worship can also host congregations at 40. Police continue their search for drugs that landed on Thursday in Corozal. A police officer has been served with a notice of intended prosecution after he knocked down and killed a Camalote resident. And Police Commissioner Chester Williams says charges are coming for former Consul General in New York, Herman Longsworth. Details of these stories and much more coming up in tonight's newscast.
Yeah, where to go?
You go out, my dog?
Yeah, at the car,
Everybody.
evening. Welcome to News 5 Live for Friday, May 29th. I am Sabrina Daly. Today marks a record 46 days since there are no new cases of coronavirus recorded in Belize, and the Prime Minister took the occasion to address the nation on the way forward. But first, we'll begin with news pertaining to international air travel and tourism. The Philip Golson International Airport, despite further relaxation of regulations under the national state of emergency, will remain closed for the time being, and there is no fixed date for when Belize will resume international travel. This morning, during a virtual press conference, Prime Minister Dean Barra explained various reasons why the country's only international airport will not reopen come July 1st, as has been forecasted. Several factors were taken into consideration, though there was a majority vote at the Cabinet and National Oversight Committee levels in favor of that previous date. As it stands, the number of COVID-19 cases in neighboring Central American countries and Mexico has ballooned over the past few days. Likewise, the United States continues to experience record cases of infections and deaths. American visitors comprise as much as 75% of Belize's tourism market. So when will international air travel officially resume? Here's what the PM had to say.
It surely is not hard to understand why we so ardently wished for a go at the PGIA. Tourism is our largest job creator and the biggest contributor to GDP and foreign exchange earnings. In 2019, for example, total tourism expenditure in Belize was $502.3 million US. But COVID-19 is decimating the industry. The devastation is such that between January and April of this year, tourist spending in Belize fell by $82 million US over the same period last year. And until the PGIA can reopen, it is only going to get worse. Now, even as we pushed to reopen, we had to bear certain facts well in mind. With regard to international travel prohibitions, the US decision to ban Chinese visitors from as early as January of this year was widely applauded. At its peak, though, only 82,000 of 1.3 billion Chinese were infected, and Chinese visitors to the US represented just about 3% of the US's total annual visitors. Yet, the US proceeded with its embargo on Chinese travel to America. Currently, the US also bans visitors from Brazil. 320,000 Brazilians are infected out of a total population of 210 million, and Brazilians represent just 4% of visitor flows to the US. In our own case vis-à-vis the US, we had to reflect on the fact that there are 1.8 million Americans infected. A third of all COVID-19 deaths are US, and that country is the source of 75% of our visitors. So the US, in circumstances of a relatively minuscule visitor flow from Brazil and China, nevertheless froze all travel from those two countries. The logic for our initial proscription ban on travel to Belize from the US in the context of their world-leading infection rate and there being our 75% source market is thus clearly irrefutable. That is why our drive to reopen the PGIA had to be subject to our doing our absolute best to mitigate the undeniable and serious risk of imported infections coming from any resumed flow of US visitors.
The Prime Minister also outlined that the reopening of the PGIA hinges on rapid testing. All appeared to be in place, but on Thursday, the International Air Transport Association is now insisting on rapid testing that is to be administered by the airlines before boarding by passengers. The airlines fell in step, so for now, the resumption of commercial flights will not occur until those rapid tests have been certified for use.
According to IATA, that could not work now, and Belize should wait on the development of a reliable rapid test that would allow for the airlines themselves to administer a pre-boarding test. After that, the dominoes started falling. The carriers changed their tune, and it became clear that they would not fly to Belize if we insisted on travelers coming armed with a negative test result. I repeat, though, that our paramount safety concerns mandate our holding firm on that requirement. Long story short, I am, in consequence of all this, today unable to confirm July 1st as a firm reopening date for the PGIA. If IATA holds its position that is seemingly mirrored now by the airlines, we will not be able to reopen until there is mass availability of approved rapid tests. Now, of course, in the meantime, if there are charter carriers that would want to come to Belize on condition that their passengers would in fact be able to present negative test results upon arrival, we would reopen for that sort of a purpose.
Belize's land borders are also to remain closed indefinitely. PM Barra pointed to a spike in coronavirus cases in Mexico, Guatemala, and Honduras. Those countries surround Belize in the north, west, and south, respectively, have seen significant increases in reported cases of COVID-19 over the past week alone, forcing government to further postpone the opening up of Belize's frontier points.
This question of the external reopening. I make clear at once that an early loosening of the entry prohibition at our land borders was never on the cards. That is because in only the last week, the number of COVID-19 cases has surged in the countries surrounding us. Mexico went up by 25%, from 56,000 to 75,000. Guatemala by 80%, from 2,200 to 4,000. Honduras by 50%, from 3,000 to 4,400. El Salvador from 1,600 to 2,100. In the case of Mexico, questions have arisen as to whether there is underreporting. That notwithstanding, Mexico is now globally the 17th most infected out of 200 countries and territories. It is in that context that we agreed that there would likely be a considerable wait before we could unseal our land borders. On the other hand, there has been the most anxious, searching, and intense debate at both the NOC and Cabinet over a possible standalone reopening of the PGIA. It is no secret that we have, since around a month ago, been aiming for a July 1st recommencement of operations at our only international airport. Indeed, by majority vote at both the Cabinet and the NOC, the decision was made to confirm that July 1st date, subject to certain conditions being put in place.
On June 1st, a new round of relaxed measures will come into effect across the country as Belize continues to remain free of new coronavirus cases. This morning, PM Barrow prefaced what can be expected during the weekend edition of Ask the Experts, where Attorney General Michael Perrafete is expected to elaborate on the eased regulations. Nonetheless, for some, there is little comfort in an hour-long curfew extension on Friday and Saturday. The restriction on movement, the Prime Minister admits, has seen a drastic reduction in crime and violence. The PM provided a cursory look at the measures to be relaxed as of Monday morning.
When you wake up Monday morning, the SI would be extant and would usher in the following. The number allowed for gatherings with social distancing will increase from 10 to 40. In particular, our places of worship with the requisite space will be able physically to host congregations of that size. Tacos and other street vendors can get back to business, but will need to comply with certain sanitary protocols. Those protocols are being finalized and will be handed to those who have emerged as the leaders of the street vendor community between today and tomorrow. The permission to operate already given to open-air restaurants will now be extended to all restaurants. This again is on condition that the physical distancing and other rules will still apply. The sale of Bolido, much anticipated at least in some quarters, will restart, and casinos will also be allowed to reopen. Neither smoking nor alcohol consumption is to be allowed in the casinos. Approval is being given for gyms in accordance with the strict guidelines ratified by the NOC. In accordance with those guidelines, gyms can now reopen. All non-contact open-air sports are to be permitted for practice and exercise purposes, and in fact, exercise hours are no longer restricted to the 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. time slot. Sport fishing is also allowed. General curfew hours are being broadened only for Fridays and Saturdays. Thus, on those 2 days, curfew will be from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m.
The PM also announced that the children's curfew stays generally at 6 p.m. to 8 a.m. But minors can move about from 5 a.m. up to 8 p.m. on weekdays and 9 p.m. on weekends if and only if they are accompanied by a responsible adult. June is graduation season for schools and all levels across the country. With the state of emergency still in effect until the end of the month, traditional commencement exercises will be abandoned due to the strict social distancing guidelines, forcing school administrations to get creative with their graduation plans. A number of high schools are already planning virtual ceremonies. This afternoon, Minister of Education Patrick Farber held a virtual press conference following the Prime Minister's media brief earlier today to further discuss the issue of graduations. He says that once the schools are able to remain in compliance with the regulations under the state of emergency, they won't need any special permission to host their respective graduations. An example is the Belize High School.
The children's curfew stays generally at 6 p.m. to 8 a.m., but minors can move about from 5 a.m. up to 8 p.m. on weekdays and 9 p.m. on weekends if and only if they are accompanied by a responsible adult. As a result of those unofficial leaked NOC notes, much confusion has arisen surrounding the holding of graduation ceremonies. The true position is this: both Cabinet and the NOC received a proposal from the Belize High School regarding a particular mode for their particular ceremony. Acceptance of the proposal would have meant agreeing to breach the numbers cap of 10, now 40, on gatherings. Although both Cabinet and the NOC felt that what the Belize High School was proposing could be safely done. There was also, though, a worry that permission to BHS could be seen as preferential treatment. Ultimately, the NOC asked that the Ministry of Education consult with all the principals of our high schools. The ministry is to find out how the other high schools are planning graduation ceremonies that conform to the social distancing protocols, and what the other principals think of the BHS proposal. There is thus no effort to impose any one-size-fits-all template on the high schools.
The Prime Minister today announced a measure to assist the ailing tourism sector. The Development Finance Corporation has been tapped by government to assist with the financial recovery of the embattled industry, where earnings have plunged by 164 million Belize dollars between January and April due to the coronavirus. DFC will be extending its services to tourism stakeholders through funds that will be made available from the Caribbean Development Bank. The concern, however, has been a lowering of interest rates on loans to be borrowed from those funds. According to the PM, rates will be lowered one way or another.
At some juncture, tourism will have to be reopened, even though it might mean, I don't think so, but it could mean running what some people would see as heightened risks. If we face that choice, we will simply have to do what we must do. And then in terms of the assistance that's going to be needed in the meantime for the tourism industry, I said, I think perhaps before you joined the meeting, when I was doing the introductory remarks, that we are already working with the Development Finance Corporation to identify funding for the tourism sector. Now, what Mrs. Goff from DFC, the general manager of DFC, told me is that there is already a CDB line that we can use. The interest rate is going to be the difficulty there. I will then get in touch with the president of CDB, since this is a CDB line, to try to negotiate a lowering of the rate. I can tell you this without wanting to prejudge how that conversation will go. By hook or by crook, we will make sure that the current rate will, in fact, the current interest rate will in fact be reduced. That's with respect to the DFC line.
The price of fuel is creeping up again. Regular fuel will go by 46 cents and at midnight on Saturday to retail at $8 per gallon. This is the second time in a week that the price of regular is going up. On May 23rd, it went up by 36 cents, which means that in 7 days, consumers are paying an average of 82 cents more for regular. Diesel, however, will decrease by 61 cents to retail at $7.28. The price for premium gasoline remains at $10.92, while kerosene will sell at $5.43. Coming up, a mentally ill resident of Camalote was knocked down by a cop.
Hello, friends. I'm Dr. Bob Roberts.
A mentally ill resident from the village of Camalote was knocked down and killed on Thursday night. Roy Vanson was walking about a mile away from his house when he was hit by a police mobile driven by a cop. Vanson, who was a market assistant in Belmopan, perished on the spot. Here is News 5's Dwayne Moody with a report.
A police officer has been served with a notice of intended prosecution after he knocked down and killed a 57-year-old Camalote resident overnight. The cop was driving a police mobile and was responding to an incident in the village when he hit Roy Vanson in the vicinity of Chicken Run. Vanson died on the spot.
3 police officers were on board a police mobile patrol westbound to check into an information. When upon the driver reaching between miles 49 and 50, a dark complexioned male person suddenly came onto the highway and was unavoidably hit by the police mobile. As a result, the ambulance was called to the scene. However, at that time, the person was already motionless.
According to police, Vanson had been drinking and socializing earlier that night. Around 11:30 p.m., he was walking on the highway about a mile from where he lived when he was killed.
We also found out during our investigation that Mr. Vanson lives alone and he was supposedly socializing at a home in that area prior to the incident. The normal procedures were followed, being that the driver was requested of urine or blood samples, which he gave, and he has since been released after being served with a notice of intended prosecution. As the commissioner said, it is an unfortunate incident. However, we still need to put together an investigation file which will be submitted to the DPP for her direction into this matter.
It is not known what Vanson was doing in the area since a curfew was in effect. What is known is that on a daily basis, Shorty, as he was affectionately known, made his keep by helping around the marketplace in Belmopan. He, according to the family he lives with, had a mental illness. They were informed around 12:30 about his demise.
Charter left Thursday morning for going to work, which he always help people out the market to make his very own pocket money, and he did never return in at the evening. Because I don't know if he made it do after hours work with the people them, but after 12:01 in the morning, when we got a phone call that they said they knocked down Shorty by the police and he died on the spot.
The incident has left the officer traumatized, and Commissioner of Police Chester Williams says that they are working to get that officer counseling.
It is an unfortunate situation for us. The police officer in question arrangement is currently being made for him to undergo counseling, because for him it is hard as well. It's not something easy to know that you have taken the life of someone unintentionally. I do not know the circumstances other than what the officers have reported. I guess Mr. Maivet have more details that he will share with you. But I want to take the opportunity to express our sincere condolence to the family of the deceased person. And we ourselves need to do our part for our officers to ensure that they too can overcome the trauma of this experience.
Dwayne Moody for News 5.
Assistant Commissioner of Police Joseph Maivet also gave an update on the fatal road traffic accident on the Old Northern Highway that claimed the life of 68-year-old Rudolph Rodriguez over the extended weekend. The family had said that the driver of the vehicle didn't stop to render assistance after hitting Rodriguez, who was on his way home. Today, police say that the suspect vehicle has been impounded and the investigation is ongoing.
Family members from San Hilden picked him up where he was transported to the Carl Hushner Memorial Hospital. No report was made to the police at that point in time, so it's based on the bits and pieces, and after he arrived with those injuries that the police commenced an investigation. And during that investigation, A vehicle fitting the description has since been impounded, and we know that the police was seeking one person in relation to this investigation who resides on the old Northern Highway as well. I cannot confirm at this point in time whether or not that person has already been or is in custody.
BDF soldiers and police officers remain in the area where a narco jet landed on Thursday morning. The jet, believed to be carrying drugs, landed on a farm off the Shunush-Sartaneja Road in Corozal. Authorities had received information before the plane departed from Venezuela. However, police presence at the original landing site forced the pilot to land elsewhere. When police got to the crash site, the plane had been emptied and no one was found inside the immediate area. Investigators are relying on 2 suspects from Orange Walk who are currently being interviewed. Commissioner Chester Williams says security forces will remain in the area in search of the drugs.
We have 2 persons in custody, and those persons we believe are part and parcel of the mastermind behind the landing of the planes. They are being interviewed with a view to see if any useful information can be obtained from them to try and recover the content of the plane.
Sir, those persons were detained in the area?
No, they were not detained in the area, no.
So it's police intel that led you guys to
Yes. We have the waterways secured by Coast Guard. And if it is that they had used the waterways, then the Coast Guard would have intercepted them. May I say that we had received pre-information from when a plane departed out of Venezuela. And as we normally do, we dispatch officers to various locations where we anticipated the plane would have landed. And I would want to think that the presence of the teams in those areas was what forced the plane to go and land at a secondary location. And that's what basically caught us off guard. Nonetheless, we're still doing our best with a view to see if we can find the cargo.
Tonight, we have official information on the cold-blooded, broad daylight execution of Oscar Vasquez. On May 28, the Bosito driver left the Belmopan market area en route to Cotton Tree with 13 passengers inside the van. But between miles 45 and 46 on the George Price Highway, he was signaled to stop by a man who turned out to be an accomplice of his killer. As the minivan came to a stop, one of the passengers inside the vehicle pulled out a gun and opened fire on Vasquez. The gunman then fled the vehicle, and he and his partner in crime escaped into nearby bushes. Investigations have since revealed that Vasquez had been receiving death threats and also was the complainant in a couple cases that were before the courts.
He was signaled to stop by a male Hispanic person who was on the side of the highway, and in so doing, a male Hispanic person who was sitting immediately behind the driver then pulled out a handgun from his pants waist and fired several shots towards the driver. Thereafter, he exited the van and both made good their escape into the bushes. We have not yet been able to establish a clear motive. We know for certain that robbery was not one. We also, during our investigation, knew of several complaints where the deceased was the victim, and there are 2 matters before the court in which he is the complainant. Since the death, we have also learned of several threats. So police are seeking one person at this time in relation to this investigation.
So he was murdered in front of his passengers?
Yes.
The question remains tonight whether a hit was carried out on Xinwu Zoo. Video footage shows the hair salon owner of Hopkins Street in the Kings Park area of Belize City outside his business after 6 o'clock on Wednesday evening. A fair-complexioned gunman rode up to the store, not to purchase anything, but to unleash gunfire on the unsuspecting Chinese businessman. Multiple shots hit Zhu as he staggered to escape. But Zhu, better known as Joe, did not survive the shooting and died hours later while hospitalized. He was not known to have had conflict with anyone, and while police have not been able to ascertain a motive, ACP Joseph Mivett says that one person has been taken into custody.
What the police know so far is that Mr. Zhu was sitting outside on his step when a slim, clear-complexioned male person approached the shop window and then turned towards him and fired several shots which caught him. He was hospitalized for a couple hours before he succumbed to those injuries. Upon the police visiting the scene, a bicycle was found along with a pair of slippers. The police have interviewed several persons. We have, at this point in time, one person in our custody whom we are questioning in relation to this. Based on certain information given to us, we will continue down this line of investigation at this point in time. We have also not been able to establish any motive, as the Commissioner has clearly said. Certainly robbery was not one of those motives.
One man has been charged for the brutal murder of Abner Novello. He is 31-year-old Nimrod Sherman Katsim of Orange Walk Town. Police levied the charges today. Novello was the caretaker of a farm located off the San Antonio Road in Orange Walk. He was found with chop and gunshot wounds. His right arm had also been severed. Katsim is no stranger to the law. He was known as Nimrod Tillett, and in October 2012, he was acquitted of the gruesome murder of Enrique Castillo in 2009. Assistant Commissioner of Police Mivett says that Novello's murder was a result of an old beef.
At this point in time, police also have one person in our custody, which I believe that later today charges will be preferred against that person for murder.
Was able to ascertain the motive?
At this point in time, based on the angle the investigation has taken, we believe that it may have been an old dispute between those persons, between the deceased and the person who is now in custody and is pending charges.
As we reported on Thursday, police believe that they have cracked the case of the double murder of tour guide operator Quentin Espinosa and U.S. national Roland Burley, which occurred last Friday in Hopkins Village. 3 men are in custody, and a number of items stolen from the property have been recovered. And it would seem that the department is about to crack the case, since investigators are in the process of receiving key evidence to be able to lay charges against the killers. In a press conference held today, Assistant Commissioner of Police Joseph Mivett told the media that the investigation is showing that the double murder was a burglary gone bad.
At this point in time, we have 3 persons in our custody. A number of items were recovered during the course of the investigation. And at this point, certain things need to be done in relation to the investigation, which if they, or when they are done, and the results prove what we want them to prove, then several persons are expected to be charged for murder.
Sir, the commissioner spoke about the fact that it was a burglary gone wrong?
Yes, it was.
Guillermo Duarte, through assistance from attorney Earl Hamilton today, secured bail from the Supreme Court in the sum of $25,000 in form of property papers. Duarte is charged with the murder of 63-year-old Edgar Aldana, who was hacked with a machete by one of two men who showed up while Aldana and two friends were socializing at his house in Selena Village, Cayo, in April of 2016. One of Aldana's friends was also attacked, but he survived. The other escaped unscathed. Today, Justice Herbert Lord granted bail, but with conditions. Duarte is not to interfere with any prosecution witness. He is also to report to the San Ignacio police station 3 times a week, and he was ordered to surrender all travel documents to the registrar. Failure to comply with all of these stipulations will result in revocation of his bail. 28-year-old Rafael Velasquez, an office assistant at the resort in San Pedro, was granted bail of $8,000 today when he appeared with his attorney, Rene Montero, before Justice Herbert Lord in the Supreme Court. Justice Lord stipulated that the accused is not to interfere or communicate with any of the prosecution witnesses, report to the San Pedro police station 3 times weekly, and show up in court for his cases on August 20th. Additionally, he is not to go within 100 yards of the virtual complainant or her mother, and is not to leave the jurisdiction without the permission of a justice of the Supreme Court. If he breaches any of these conditions, his bail will be revoked. Velasquez had been on remand for 2 counts of unlawful sexual intercourse with a minor since his arraignment before San Pedro magistrate Deborah Rogers on May 20th. 2 minors from Punta Gorda and a 19-year-old have been charged for producing a video recording to promote gang activity. The 19-year-old is Gustavo Mendez of the Joe Taylor Creek area of Punta Gorda. The trio was heard making threats and seen in a live video on Facebook brandishing weapons, which turned out to be fake. The video was intimidating and caused uproar in the community. After the break, more from the Prime Minister's press conference.
Sip, sip, sip.
For 7 weeks, Belize remains free of positive COVID-19 cases. 55 tests conducted on Thursday returned negative for the novel coronavirus. The Ministry of Health has been carrying out random testing on average 3 times per week, and more than 1,500 tests have been conducted so far. Fortunately, Belize has recorded 18 positive cases with 2 deaths. During his press conference today, Prime Minister Dean Barrow said that Belize's test level is satisfactory to World Health Organization standards.
As of Wednesday, we had done 1,517 tests. There were 5 results still pending, with all others being negative except for the 18 you have long since known about. We continue to test on an average of 3 times per week. The fact that now we don't test as often as we once did has nothing to do with what that distorted report falsely described as a decision to conserve on supplies. Rather, it is that all the science, according to our Director of Health Services, proves that in our current circumstances, testing asymptomatic people is a low-yield exercise. Accordingly, our present test level is entirely satisfactory of World Health Organization standards.
The pandemic has pushed employment numbers up, and a full economic recovery will take time to occur. Most businesses project 2 years to be able to recover. 83,000 persons applied for the unemployment relief program, and 45,000 have been approved. The program is floundering because applicants continue to fill out forms with inaccurate information. Of the $75 million borrowed from Central Bank, less than 15% has been disbursed, and from the look of things, the issue can be compounded by additional layoffs.
We are having some difficulties with the unemployment relief program, as I alluded to earlier, having principally to do with the lack of information or accurate information submitted by some participants or would-be participants in the program. But we've only spent, as a consequence, something like $11 million, I believe, to date. Remember that we borrowed $75 million to fund the unemployment relief program. I did take 10 from that 75 to start the food rollout, but that is going to be reimbursed. So we still must think in terms of a $75 million pool for unemployment relief. On that basis, absolutely, with the additional layoffs that we will see now, the unemployment relief program will have to continue and perhaps be expanded.
The massive relief effort to assist thousands of destitute families with food supplies during the economic hardship that has befallen the country since the initial wave of COVID-19 is ongoing. Much like the unemployment relief program, government is working to serve the needs of all Belizeans who qualify for food assistance. While assessments have been undertaken in rural communities in Toledo, Cayo, and Orange Walk districts, the number of families that have received aid has exceeded 45,000. In respect of funds from international financial institutions, including the Inter-American Development Bank, Prime Minister Barrow says that early next week, the $24 million Belize dollars will be approved by the IDB on June 20th.
Regarding the food assistance program, these are the numbers. 46,686 households have been helped, and now the on-the-ground assessment has been completed in 38 rural villages in Toledo, Cayo, and Orange Walk. Those people are beginning at this point to be helped. Concerning what we are expecting from the international financial institutions, it is true that we are still in waiting mode. It is not true, though, that, as the inaccurate so-called notes state, no international funding will come in for the month of June. In fact, the first disbursement of the US $6.2 million from the IDB is to arrive right after the bank's June 3rd signature of the amended loan contract. The other IDB line of US $12 million is scheduled to be approved formally on June 20th, and the processing of the World Bank's $21 million is also to be completed in the latter half of next month of June. There is US $50 million more to be had from the World Bank, but those particular disbursements indeed won't happen before July.
The PM said today that the Belize dollar remains strong, but while the foreign exchange position is holding, there is a need for additional foreign exchange in the very near future. So this is prompting government to get the ball rolling on the budding hemp industry. While there are a few pilot projects presently being undertaken, PM Barrow sees hemp as the future of big business, since there is a huge demand for the tough fiber, which is used to manufacture canvas, rope, paper, and cloth. According to the Prime Minister, foreign companies are already inquiring about the possibilities of growing hemp in Belize by employing local small farmers.
Something that I prompted Cabinet on this last Tuesday's meeting, I think can take off. In fact, I was told that already pilot projects are in existence, and that is the hemp industry. I mean, this hemp thing is huge globally. We've now amended the SI to define hemp as the plants, the product that have a THC content of 0.3% or lower, because that is what the US requires in terms of their legislation. In Canada, it's different. It's up to 1%. But the bottom line is hemp is huge, and if we can get that hemp production going, and either well, there are two models. There are some who want to actually process the hemp in Belize. There are others who just want us to export the product and have the processing done in Canada or whatever. Naturally, I would favor the first model. But in all cases, people aren't talking about coming in to invest and trying to do the growing, the production themselves. They're talking about trying to employ farmers, in particular small farmers, to give them the throughput. But that's an excellent example of one way in which we can push and thereby realize some additional foreign exchange earnings. I am sure that there are others.
The PM also said that the exportation of cattle to Guatemala and Mexico is to resume. There's much more news after the break, so stay tuned. Former Minister of Sports and Consul General in New York, Herman Longsword, was fired after it was revealed that he was responsible for questionable cash transactions. An audit into the finances of the National Sports Council by the Auditor General documented dubious cash transactions involving Longsword and several other persons. The matter came to light months ago, and tonight, Longsword remains the subject of a criminal investigation into the misappropriation of tens of thousands of dollars in contracts at the Marion Jones Sports Complex. The payments were approved by former acting sports director Patrick Henry, whose name also appears several times for suspicious cash transactions. News 5 asked Commissioner Chester Williams for an update into the investigation. According to Williams, several criminal charges can be levied against Longsword.
That matter, yes, is still with the investigators, as I've said before, that we had put together a team of investigators to look at the Auditor's General report. The last time I spoke with the investigators, I was told that the DPP was going through the report herself, and based on that, she would then direct the police what course of action, what charges, if any, will be brought against Mr. Longsword. I personally, having read the Auditor General report, I can see several charges that can be levied against him. But again, there's an investigation ongoing, and my direction to the investigators is to put together the file and send it to the DPP, and then she'll be the one to decide how we proceed with that matter. So I don't know how far they are with that, but that's my last update.
Okay, now just to continue on that, sir, I know that there were several other persons whose names were called in that report. Are they to be investigated? And
yes.
Have you also looked at that as to whether charges would be preferred against?
Yes, all the characters named in the report are a part of the investigation. But again, you'll know that one of the biggest delay we had was because of the COVID-19 issue, where some of the other agencies from whom we were awaiting reports were not functioning at full capacity. And so that have held us back to some extent.
On February 26, Commissioner of Police Chester Williams told News 5 that disgraced Minister John Saldivar would naturally be brought in for questioning into the allegations of bribery against him. That is yet to occur. Saldivar first denied having received tens of thousands of dollars from fraudsters Lev Derman and Jacob Kingston. But soon after, a U.S. District Court revealed text messages between Kingston and Saldivar showing that Saldivar collected monies. Saldivar, however, said that the monies were a donation which was used to purchase sports equipment in the U.S. The investigation seemed to have stalled, and we asked the commissioner whether investigators have been able to get their hands on the authenticated copy of the text messages.
That investigation is still ongoing. You know that the COVID-19 really put a halt on many things that we're doing, but it is still ongoing. We have submitted our request to the Attorney General Ministry for the MLAT report that we want in terms of the mutual assistance program, where we're requesting certain things from the U.S. authorities, including text messages. That request is now the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. There are also certain things we have requested from the Integrity Commission. We have also requested certain things from Immigration and from Customs. So, for the most part, those offices were not functioning at their full capacity, and so there have been some delay, but the investigation is still going.
What about text messages from the government-owned BTL?
The time is too long. They don't store the text messages for so long.
Okay. Has John Saldivar been asked to come in and give a statement or be questioned?
At this time, no.
The scandal caused his resignation as leader-elect of the UDP. But his name is back on the list when the UDP holds its leadership convention. But before that, Saldivar will be holding a press conference on Monday to talk about an economic recovery working paper that he has penned. Coming up after the break, a young girl's plea for assistance. Harmony Young is suffering from a brain tumor and needs urgent medical care. The family of 16-year-old Harmony Young has had to deal with her life-threatening illness during the COVID-19 pandemic. The young girl has been diagnosed with a malignant tumor in her brain. The pandemic has put her treatment on halt, but her condition is deteriorating rapidly. Harmony's family is moving mountains to take her for urgent medical attention in Guatemala, but needs your help to save her life. News 5's Hipólito Novello reports.
What's your tea time, money? Put a toothbrush in your mouth.
This is Harmony Young. She's 16 years old, but unlike other teenage girls, Harmony is suffering from a life-threatening condition. She has lost vision in her right eye. Her left eye's vision is blurry. On March 6, Harmony was diagnosed with a malignant tumor that sits in the frontal portion of the brain.
From that time, we've been trying to see how much we can get assistance, but with the COVID situation, it has caused a delay because we were going through the World Pediatric Project, so that went on pause. But since March 6, she has been deteriorating very fast.
Harmony had to be hospitalized earlier this week after her situation got worse. She shivers a lot and experiences loss of appetite.
The whole time it's not as though we weren't doing anything. We were banking on the assistance from World Pediatric to come our way and hope that she would have had enough strength to get through it. But right now, that doesn't seem to be the case.
Okay, I understand that she was hospitalized sometime earlier this week.
I took her to the hospital because when her mom went to have a baby. So when I brought her to me, she wasn't eating. And she has been known to be a really big eater. So she wasn't consuming anything. So because she's in my care, I said, let me take her to the hospital just to have them check out and give me some advice as what I can do with her.
Harmony's aunt Charmaine Augustus was told that Harmony needs urgent medical attention. The preference is to take Harmony to Guatemala, where a doctor has agreed to do surgery. The cost, however, is a staggering $25,000. The family needs to leave the country as soon as the money is raised. Assisting the family is the Belize Brain Society.
She needs the surgery immediately. It's not if, but nor maybe she needs the surgery immediately. But as you do know, for many persons and many reasons, finance does play a major role at this point. So that's the reason why we're here. Also in the organization, we always ask that persons assist how they can, because every little count at this point. At this junction that we're at, the assistance is greatly needed.
If you want to assist Harmony, funds can be deposited in Atlantic Bank account number 211982880 and at St. John's Credit Union account number 30972. Reporting for News 5, Hipólito Novello.
And that's the news. Don't forget that tonight's broadcast is available in both text and streaming video at channel5belize.com. You can also connect with us on our Facebook page at facebook.com/News5Live. I'm Sabrina Daly. Thanks for joining us, and from all of us here at News 5, please remember to wash your hands, keep your social distance, and stay safe. Have a happy and safe weekend. Good night.